Time now for The Real World with Lee Anderson. And in a reality check for The Nation, it's been revealed that over half of British households take more from the state than they put in, with the top 10% of earners contributing 53% of all income tax received by the government. And with commentators like the Daily Mail's Richard Littlejohn suggesting too many have gotten used to pandemic-era handouts, Benefit Britain is bordering on broken. The use of food banks also continues to rise, which has led Westminster's toughest talking MP, Lee Anderson, to hit back. The Conservative Home Backbench MP of the Year caused a stir by saying that during his time working at the Citizens Advice Bureau, many service users were wasting their money on, quote, fags, booze and Sky TV. And I'm delighted to say Lee joins me now in the studio. So, Lee, you've had a lot of flack about these comments regarding food banks, but in reality, I actually view it as very uncontroversial to say that if you're earning £35,000 a year, which is well above the average wage, and you are having to use a food bank, there clearly is another issue, isn't there? It's not about your pay. It's either about you've got a gambling problem or you're drinking too much, you're spending money on drugs. Because at £35,000 a year, you shouldn't be having to use a food bank.
Well, look, Dan, before I came into Parliament, I wasn't earning anywhere near £35,000 a week, and I wasn't using a food bank. I run a car, I've got a wife, I've got a house, I've got a mortgage to pay, all that. Now, I hear these ridiculous stories that nurses, who I respect 100%, by the way, they are stealing food off patients' plates, they're going to food banks, and quite frankly, I don't believe a word of it. This is just a narrative pushed out by the unions, The Guardian, the Daily Mirror, people like that idiot Owen Jones, he's talking nonsense about this. It's pathetic.
We'll talk about him later.
The average wage in Ashfield is about 28 grand, and most of Ashfield are not using food banks. I've been to a food bank, I've helped out at the food bank, and quite frankly, 35 grand, that's enough to live on in a place like Ashfield. People are living in London on less than 35 grand.
But you get turned on for that.
Turned on all the time, you know. I mean, somebody asked me last week to produce a breakfast for 30 pence, the 30p Lee scenario. I showed them a bowl of Weetabix, that's 20 pence. Oh, what do you expect us to do? Live on Weetabix for the rest of our lives? Nonsense. People can budget. People sometimes need a little bit of education because we've got third generation now, Dan, that's not learned how to cook properly, not learned how to budget. There's been no proper role models in the house. The state have sort of had to take over managing people. That's wrong.
Well, it's Benefits Britain, isn't it?
It is Benefits
That's what's
Britain.
happening, and that's what Littlejohn was saying this morning.
Exactly. People are so, like third or fourth generation now, so dependent on benefits. They class, especially some people who work. I mean, I work with them at the CAB. When they got their dole money at the week, they said that was wages. And I said, well, hold on a minute, that's not your wages. That's the state giving you a handout to help you through a difficult time. That should never be a way of life. That should be a hand up, but, you know, we should take personal responsibility. The state's there to make sure we've got decent police, decent health service, decent education system, good law and order. The rest you should really do yourself.
Indeed. Now, look, British Border Force sources now fear our shores could be welcoming 80,000 people, Lee, by the end of the year, double the number of illegal migrants who arrived across the Channel this year. But our broken immigration system has been thrust into the headlines after a convicted killer was allowed to enter the UK by conning officials with a bogus asylum claim before he brutally murdered aspiring Royal Marine Thomas Roberts last March. Lee, this is such a disturbing story. My heart breaks for the family of Thomas Roberts, but this is why folk like you and me have been saying we cannot allow these vast numbers of illegals to enter the country. I mean, this guy lied. He said he was 14 years old. Yep. He said his parents were killed by the Taliban. He was a murderer. He was a literal murderer. If he had been properly investigated, they would have found out he was a murderer in another country.
Dan, I feel sick to the pit of my stomach reading about this today. He's a creature, he's not a man. He's a creature that's murdered abroad. He's come here, he's told lies. He's been put in foster care. It's cost the British taxpayer thousands and thousands of pounds. And now we're going to put him in prison for 20-odd years. It's going to cost the British taxpayer thousands and thousands of pounds again. That's not the answer. And I think the answer is, and I'll say this with a heavy heart, it's probably at the end of a rope. I believe in the death penalty for cases like this. He should be put to sleep. Absolute waste of space. He should not be on this earth. He's done a wicked, awful thing. And that family's got to live with this for the rest of their lives. There's no place in society. But you know what? When these people come on the boat or whichever way they get here, I've said from day one, Dan, they should be detained. We don't know where they've come from. until we can find out properly where they've come from and what they've been up to. Just lock them up in a detention centre till we know. Because at the end of the day, the British public should come first, always.
But Lee, we are accused of being the heartless ones when we have this conversation. Well, tell that to the family of Thomas Roberts, who will never have their son as part of their family again. You know, this was an aspiring Royal Marine. By all accounts, a guy with a huge future ahead. And we should all be worried, shouldn't we? Because these criminals are streaming in. And I'm not saying they are all criminals, but you only need for there to be one.
No, I disagree with you. I think they're all criminals. I think when they get here illegally, they have broken the law and they shouldn't be here. And, you know, we should not be ferrying them off to a processing centre and then to a four-star hotel. As far as I'm concerned, said it since day one, should be put in a detention centre. They should not be allowed roaming the streets, terrorising people. Lock them up, keep them there, keep us safe, and let's, you know, speed these applications up and get them sent back.
Exactly, because there's no deterrent at the moment. And, you know, personally, I think it should be offshore.
I agree 100%.
Where they are processed. But look, it's fair to say Lee's recent times and the headlines has rubbed the left up the wrong way, and who better represents them than the bedwetting Corbynista Owen Jones, who has posed a question to the nation in his usual sincere and charming fashion.
It's a competitive field, I grant you that, but is Lee Anderson the most obnoxious Conservative MP that there is? As far as I can tell, his stock in trade is just saying obnoxious things he knows will annoy anyone vaguely to the left of Genghis Khan.
That's a big compliment, isn't it?
Well, I think he's got a crush on me, Dan, don't you? What a pathetic, snivelling little weasel he is. I mean, he pops up in The Guardian, he pops up on social media. Nobody's really paying much attention to this idiot. I think he's had his day. I looked on his Twitter today, and I think to sign up to be a patron to listen to this nonsense, it's going to cost the hard-up Britons £100 a month. Oh. What an hypocrite. This is a man who champions the working class. He pretends he's a working-class hero. You know what? He has never done a decent day's work in his life. He's a pathetic little man.
Yeah, and let's see how big his Guardian pay package is.
Well, bring that Guardian to me. I'll deal with that Guardian.
For £100. Now, Lee, look, you've got your beautiful blue Brexit passport here. What's going on? You're off somewhere.
You say it's blue, Dan. I mean, it looks black to me, but I will take your word for it.
We had this debate.
Yeah, we've had this argument.
I think
before. But look, I'm not off on my holidays tomorrow. I'm going to France for a few days to look at these migrant centres and look at the problems we've got in over there. You know, I wanted to go much earlier than this. I think it's my duty as a member of Parliament, somebody who sits on the Home Affairs Select Committee, to go and see this nonsense first and then, you know, report back what's actually happening, not what the left would like you, you know, to believe.
OK, well, good. Go and find out, and then you'll be back at your usual time next Wednesday, and you can report back on what you've found out. Lee Anderson, good stuff. Have a safe trip.